Hello and welcome to my reviews for Blue Planet 2, starting with the first episode, One Ocean. So this episode is an intro episode to the series. Obviously, after Planet Earth 2 came out, it was a huge success. This series, which originally was going to be called One Ocean, I believe, the BBC basically decided, well, we've got the series about oceans coming up. Why don't we make this a sequel to our second most successful ever series, which was, of course, Blue Planet. They did that, and to be honest, I think as a sequel, this works more than Planet Earth 2. Planet Earth 2 had episodes that were based around new habitats, they had episodes that were based around old habitats. This one, I feel like, deals with the same habitats, but shows you mostly new stuff, some old stuff, but mostly new stuff. It kind of feels like more of a continuation of Blue Planet than Planet Earth 2 did. And it opens up with David Attenborough on a boat describing what the series is going to be like. He basically says it's going to be Blue Planet, but with better technology, better camera equipment, better shots, and that's exactly what this series is. And the first major bit of footage we get is bottlenose dolphins. We see bottlenose dolphins riding the waves and looking for coral. They basically rub themselves against these coral. We don't really know why they do it. It might be because it's social, it might be because it brings them health benefits, and we see this calf watching the other adults and learning to do it from them. Quite cool. It's really good setup for what the rest of the series is going to be like. It's great shots. I think the fact that we have an animal that we're all very familiar with, an animal that everyone kind of likes and at least knows, is the first main bit of footage in the series, I think is a smart choice. We get a lot of weirder things later in this episode, so I think that was a good way of starting us off. And it's a really good sequence, it's quite fun. It's not the most memorable of the series, but it's a good way of starting you off. Then we kind of move on to coral reefs. We see a little bit of stuff there. The shots they get of the stuff is great. I mean, it's not like major bits of footage, it's just really cool one-off little shots. We do focus on the tuskfish, which is a fish that's got really weird, tusks essentially, and it basically grabs shells and cracks them against this coral to break them open. It's a rare example of tool use in fish. When we think of tool use, we mostly think of chimpanzees, sometimes crows, elephants maybe. We don't think of fish. I think fish are generally seen as fairly unintelligent, uninteresting to most of us because they live in a habitat that we don't exist in. We rarely cross paths with fish unless we've got goldfish. I think the tuskfish was really interesting, and again, whether you agree with how intelligent it is, they maybe hype it up a little bit. You can't deny it is using a tool. It has made the connection that by beating this shell against this bit of coral, it will open it eventually. Then we see this tern colony. So this tern colony, we've got all the parents have reared their chicks, and the chicks are learning to fly for the first time, and they do test flights over the surf. However, they are hunted by an unexpected predator, the giant trevally. So trevally have featured in other things. We know they're predators. If you've seen these series before, you've heard the name trevally, and you kind of know they're probably predators. However, you don't really ever think of them as being a main threat. They basically grab the chicks while they're at the surface, and some will actually jump out of the water to catch them. There is one really cheesy line in it that I don't like. It's probably my least favourite line in the whole series, which is when Attenborough says that the fish can calculate the wind speed, the wind direction, the angle, the trajectory. It has to do all these calculations in its head before catching the birds. In actual fact, it's just sees the bird, and it just jumps out and catches them. That's basically what's happening here. I don't think any complex calculations are going on in this fish's head. It's not going, right, if the bird's there, and I go at this depth, and the wind speed's going that way, and the wind direction's there, if I jump at this time, I'll catch it. That doesn't happen. None of that's happening. The fish is going, oh, bird, up. That's it. So, still really cool though. It's a really good shot. Outside of that line, I really like the sequence. It's really good. Again, the shots are great. The actual trevally are quite intimidating because they look, in a weird way, like fish. Hear me out. Their eyes are very fish-like. They're kind of dead. There's no emotion behind it. They kind of seem like cold killers in a way. And I think that's really effective. Like a shark, you kind of can add emotions to a shark. You can add something to a shark. We know what a shark looks like. Trevally, there's not a lot there to attach feelings to. I think that made them seem more intimidating. And that was a really good sequence. Again, I was really on the side of the terns trying to get away with that one when it basically has done its complex calculations and jumps out of the water. And it almost gets the tern. The tern's feet are in its mouth basically, but it manages to get away. That was a really good shot. Quite a good sequence. I think that one line does bring it down a little bit for me. A lot of other people probably like that sequence more than I do, but still really good. I still really enjoyed it. Then we see storms. So the storms are amazing. The shots of the waves are great. We saw that in Blue Planet. This is an example where something was filmed in Blue Planet, but it's done a hell of a lot better here. The shots where you see the shadow of the waves behind them is great. I think the whole thing was great. It was a really good sequence. I really liked that. Then we see Mobula rays. Mobula rays just jumping around. That's great. The footage there is amazing as well. The shot from above of them all just basically carpeting the top layer of the ocean is amazing. The jumping is great. However, seeing them catching the bioluminescent fish, I think it was, It was great. The bioluminescent blue just sparkling around the rays is amazing. It's like something out of Avatar, to be honest. Then we see false killer whales. We see them chasing dolphins. It kind of makes out that they're hunting them. However, when they get up to them, they're actually just socializing. They know each other. They interact. They hunt fish. We saw that in mammals in greater detail. However, I think it's more effective here. Maybe because it's the first time I saw that. I didn't think the false killer whales were actually hunting the bottlenose dolphins because I knew that they were a similar size and it would probably be very difficult for them to do that. However, if you didn't know what a false killer whale was, which was probably most people, you probably would be surprised by it. And that's really cool. It kind of made me not anthropomorphize, but compare them to us in a way. You've got these two very different species interacting, playing, that clearly know each other, and it's kind of nice. And you look at us, and we're killing each other because what we look different. We think of ourselves as a lot more highly developed, highly evolved, and maybe we are in some ways, but there maybe is a thing or two we could learn from other species. I thought that was kind of interesting. And then we see the Kobudia giant wrasse, which is a species of giant wrasse found off the coast of Japan. And we see this massive male. He's pretty monstrous. He's got a massive bulbous head, big chin. He's apparently very sexy for a giant wrasse. Not so for us. We see he's courting the females. Females are a lot smaller, and we see this one female who's kind of a bit bigger, just disappearing in a little crevice. And the sequence is very creepy. You kind of get little snippets of what the female's going through, the changes she's going through, and it's kind of almost like a Frankenstein's monster type thing. It's alive! When we see the female emerges, she is no longer a female, she's now a male. I did figure that's where we were going though, but it was really cool again seeing the female who's now a male, who's much bigger than the original male, take him on, take him down, and then is able to mate with other females. The last little shot is showing another female who extends her mouth in a kind of frightening way, and it's like, well, while this might be a potential mating opportunity at the moment, might be a rival next year, you never know. Then we talk about ocean currents, and we talk about how the fjords in Norway are left ice-free, and all this herring gathers there, and that's where orcas come. So we saw this sequence in Blue Planet. However, it's filmed much more spectacularly here. We have suction cameras on some of the orcas, which is amazing. I mean, it's actually used better later in the series, but it was great here. Seeing the orcas going into the herring, catching them, smacking them with their tails, knocking them out. Everything we saw in Blue Planet, it just looks a lot better here. The footage is amazing. It's really good. It's the only orca sequence we get in this series, which is probably fair, I think. We got a lot of them in the first Blue Planet, and most of that wasn't very nice for the viewer, so fair enough. But it's really cool. What I think is more cool, though, is comparing that sequence with them, not just in terms of technology, but in terms of how the situation has actually developed. So humpback whales have moved in, they've learned that all this herring's here, and the orcas basically herd them, they basically gather them into bait balls. Let's not say that word. But they basically reap the rewards of the orcas' hard work and eat them. It's kind of interesting seeing orcas and humpback whales alongside each other. We don't actually get too many shots of them alongside, which makes me think the humpback whales actually scare the orcas off. I don't know. But they basically come in and eat all the fish. It's really cool. I didn't know this happened, but I hadn't seen it like this kind of footage of it before, which is great. We think of these natural behaviours, as they've happened for millions of years, and they've always been like that. But it's interesting to see something like this change in such a short space of time. I mean, Blue Planet only came out in 2001, and Blue Planet 2 came out in 2017. I mean, that's not even 20 years, and this situation drastically changed. It's quite cool. Then we go into the Arctic and we see walruses. So this is where we see the first environmental angle that we go in this series. I'll talk about that in later episodes, because as you know, if you've seen the series before, we get a lot more of those. But it's really interesting because we see walruses, the ice is melting. And to be honest, I often thought of walruses as animals that weren't as, bothered by it as things like polar bears and stuff like that. But no, they absolutely are, because, when the polar bears scare them off the beach, they are forced into the water and they have to rest on icebergs. However, there aren't really many of them left, and a lot of them are really small, so all these walruses are gathered on, these tiny little ice floes, and there's this one mother we follow with her calf, and it's really sad. I mean, that she's cradling the calf in the water. It does tug on your heartstrings, and she just can't get on the ice. At one point she manages to get on one, but there's all these other mothers with their calves on there, and they all just get knocked off because the ice just sinks under the weight of them all. It's quite emotive, which does manage to get onto an ice. It's nice, she gets her calf there. To be honest, not to spoil it, but I don't think that's the same walrus. The tusks were definitely longer when she was going onto the ice floe. Just skip that part of the video if you didn't want it spoiled for you. But it's really nice. It does really make you feel something, and it's kind of weird that walruses became, for a while anyway, the go-to animals for making you feel something about the environment. Like our planet and Seven Worlds One Planet also used walruses to stir your heartstrings. Most effectively in our planet. That was horrific. It kind of unknowingly sets you up for what the rest of the series is going to be like, because there's going to be a lot more of that in later episodes. So I really like that. And then we get the Diaries. It's basically about them filming the waves, the dolphins, specifically dolphins jumping through the waves. It's quite cool. I mean, I don't think it's as good as some of the Diaries we got in Planet Earth or Planet Earth 2. But it's still interesting. Maybe because it doesn't feature as many animals. I really liked about it was at the start of that diary sequence. We basically saw snippets of other sequences in the series, showing you the different types of technology they were using. Overall, this episode is pretty great. It's a great opening to the series. I mean, again, not much of this footage is going to appear later on, which is good. I like how it just stands here alone. Again, highlights were probably the orcas and the humpback whales and the herring. I really like the giant wrasse. The tuskfish was cool. There wasn't the walruses, obviously. Actually, the walruses were probably the most emotive part of the episode for me. Yeah, this episode's great. There isn't much I didn't like. I didn't like that one line in the trevally sequence, but the sequence itself was great. Again, yeah, really good stuff. So, what did you think of this episode? Let me know in the comments below. Next week I'll be doing the deep episode, so I look forward to that. I do remember that one being very good. And yeah, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe, or don't if you don't want to. It's fine. I'll see you next week, and goodbye.